Welcome to the Association's Futures Podcast, brought to you by Association Activision. We ask you to join us to discuss the future of the Association's community. How can we build and focus on the many futures we will see during these disruptive times? Let's get started with today's guest.
Welcome to Association's Futures Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Butera, and today we have with us a special guest. Her name is Tucker Kendall, and Tip has been the Executive Director of the National Grants Management Association, that's NGMA, since 2022. In her first 2 years in her role, she has doubled the membership, corporate sponsorships, and event attendance. She previously worked as the Director of Membership Services at the International Society of Arboriculture, ISA, where she managed relationships with 69 component organizations and oversaw membership for the more than 25,000 members. She began her career in the tour and travel industry and then moved into associations as the manager of membership for the National Tour Association out of Lexington, Kentucky. She's been a speaker at several ASAE events and has served on ASAE's Young Professionals Committee, the Membership Sections Council, and ASAE's Marketing Council, and currently is a member of the Small Staff Advisory Council. Tip is a graduate of Rogues College out of Memphis, Tennessee, and is an active tennis player and sometimes runner. Better you than me, Tip. She lives outside of Atlanta with her partner and son. Tip and her team have some incredible accomplishments. Join me in welcoming Tip to our broadcast. Hi, Tip.
Hi, Michael. Thanks so much for having me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure to have you on the podcast. Hey, I really want to look at some of the work you've done in terms of building your strategic thinking team and this outstanding membership and annual member numbers that you've achieved. So let's get started by letting our guests know a little bit about the National Grant Management Association. What does it do?
All right. I think it's not unlike association managers. They're a little bit of a hidden profession. So our members are those folks who are primarily managing the post-award part of grants. So that's the reporting, the monitoring, the risk assessment, closeout audit, all of that stuff that's behind the scenes, making sure that the money gets managed according to whether it's federal or state government guidance or the requirements set up by a private or philanthropic agency that issued the award. So most of the time when I tell people I'm in grants, they think about the writing side of things, but our members are doing the long haul work of ensuring that organizations are being good stewards of the money and that they're making sure our taxes or donations are being managed appropriately and ethically. So it's really important work, even though it's a little bit behind the scenes. With that being said, like I said, with association management, there's really not a direct career path. So you don't go to school to be a grants manager. So most of our members kind of show up to a job and they're either trained there on the job or they're just kind of told, hey, go figure it out. Go read the federal guidance and learn it. But it's more complicated than that. So very often it takes about 2 years to be fully onboarded as a new grants manager. So NGMA since 1978 has been that community and that educational source where people come and learn and invest in their long-term professional growth as grants managers.
Well, thanks for filling us in because obviously people want to know how the money was used. And I suspect that's
Right.
important to the grantor to make sure that
Absolutely.
the money was used for the purpose intended, right?
That is the goal. And it's a complicated business and all the things that they have to do, particularly with federal guidance. I'm always amazed at our members that they have so many layers of guidance that they have to navigate through. But absolutely, the fact that they want to make sure that every penny is managed the way it's supposed to be managed is the goal, and that's where their heart is. And so, it's important work.
It really is. And one of my objectives on this particular podcast is to talk about the association and its journey into the future. And today, membership is a real issue in many associations. But one of the great accomplishments that you have and your team has is what I would call membership success, for heaven's sakes. Tell us about this amazing achievement you've had in terms of adding members to the association.
Sure. We just closed February with 5,597 members. So that is up 37% from last February. We've consistently grown about 30% at least every year. And we've doubled our membership since my tenure in the last 2.5 years. So it's really remarkable what our team has been able to do. In fact, our data manager sent us a note this week that said it took us 37 years to get to 1,000 members, over 4 years to get to 2,000 members, and now it's taking us about 9 months to get another 1,000 members. So we are in this cycle of just very rapid growth, and it's exciting. There comes with all kinds of challenges associated with it, but it's fun to see. I'm constantly meeting people who are like, I've been in this profession for 20 years. I didn't know about you. I love that we're getting seen by long-term grants managers, but we've also got a lot of new people coming into the fold. And that really was brought in. I think COVID was, and for other folks, COVID was maybe not great for growing their membership. For us, it was because there was an expansion of federal money. So the Coronavirus Relief Fund, the American Rescue Plan, and now we have the bipartisan infrastructure law. So there's been an influx of new grants managers into the space because of these awards going to smaller counties, cities, and organizations that previously didn't manage a lot of federal money and had no expertise to manage the money. So they brought in new folks to do that, and they needed support and education. So they sought us out. So certainly we have, we have the wind behind us a little bit in that way, but I also think we've done a lot of the right things as a staff to grow our membership. So my predecessor, made the transition very quickly to virtual learning. That was a big piece of the puzzle. We had traditionally been very East Coast centric and very focused on our annual meeting and or small chapter events. So being able to now grow, our number one area of growth has been out west, and even areas outside of major cities where that just wasn't a place that we pursued members before. So that's exciting to see those new areas. I also think that our membership is benefited because about 82% of grants managers are women. And so, being away for 4 or 5 days at a conference can be challenging as women carry a little bit more of the load of kids and parents and animals. So we found that, once we expanded to virtual learning, they had new ways to engage with us and to continue developing themselves and really leaned into us. So we have that virtual education has been a game changer to expand our membership.
So as the new centuries come in the advance of technology, that's been a real positive for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And federal guidance particularly, but grants education, it's constantly evolving. And so you really need to have a mechanism where you're having the ability to update things. In fact, the federal guidance is about to roll out a whole new stream of changes. We're literally sitting on our pins and needles waiting for it to roll out in the next 2 or 3 weeks. We don't know when the White House is going to roll it out. And so it benefits us to not have to wait until next February to train everyone on that. Now we can create virtual events where we can get all 5,000 of our members up to date on what the new federal guidance are before they take effect. And, it increases the level of competency. And so that's really what we're out here trying to do. So virtual education is amazing for us.
It sounds to me like you took a look at what the trend is and you tried to get out in front of it.
That's always the goal. I like to think that we were, unfortunately I wasn't there in the beginning to know why we made those changes, but I know that we've benefited from it and we've tried to take it and figure out what do we want to lean into and where do we need to build from, And so while we started with basic webinars, we now hold a virtual fall conference for those folks who can't come to our in-person event. They now have an opportunity to come and learn together in a virtual environment. We've also piloted some new programs virtually for new grants managers, and we're looking to do some new things this year. So it's definitely opened the door to how can we learn differently and share differently. So yeah.
Well, you mentioned also the difference between being online events, and these annual meetings. But one of your other great accomplishments for you and your team has been the attendance at your annual meeting. And the numbers there have really grown as well. What do you attribute that to?
Well, yeah, we just finished that meeting actually, and we had about 1,618 grants professionals at the Washington Hilton, which is up about 30% from last year, 91% from 2 years ago. So it was just amazing to stand on that stage and look out at a packed ballroom to see that growth. Because 2 years ago, when we were in that ballroom, there were 860 people there. I thought that was a big meeting. So I think at our core, our priorities haven't changed. We have continued to focus on having great education, and that means internal systems whereby our committees really help to shape that program. They understand what the work and the challenges are of our members, so they take a lot of responsibility and pride in making our schedule, our agenda for that meeting as good as it can be. I think my role has been to really listen very, very closely. And this is where my membership experience, I think, comes into play, is really trying to figure out, based on feedback, my experience of the meeting, what are the little places where we can really change and just pilot new things and incremental improvements that make that meeting better. And I think that we've moved it in some good directions, but yeah, it's been great. I think more than anything, it's leaning into that value of that in-person experience. It's energy, it's connection, it's the sharing. When I was first hired, my board told me that the thing that they really valued about NGMate was that feeling of these are my people. They understand the unique language of grants. We all have kind of 1,000 acronyms in our professions. That feeling of walking to the room and having kind of this homecoming. And I knew that one of my roles was to protect that and make sure that as we grew, that we were being very intentional about making sure our attendees feel that. So whether it's in our welcome videos and our opening remarks, it's in how our board and our leaders and even our staff extend themselves. We had over 800 first-time attendees this year. So almost as right around half. So, how we welcome them and help them understand what that in-person experience can be and should be is really important to me. And so, knowing that their professional community can help us be better at our jobs, replenish our low batteries, help us navigate sometimes tough ethical decisions that our grants managers face. We want to be that source of support, but I think, this sort of positive culture has been very purposeful on my part, and it's almost become very cultural across the organization now.
One of the things it sounds like to me is that you found a way to balance the traditions with the changes that have come with with all the new advances in the 21st century, which demonstrates a kind of experimentation, which sometimes in the association world, we don't quite ever get to. We're so fixed with the tradition that we don't move in a new direction. Sounds like you found the balance between those.
Yeah, I think I've been very lucky to have a board that allowed me some leverage. I haven't had a huge amount of pull of this is how we've always done things. Every once in a while we'll have those conversations, but not a lot. They give me a lot of leeway. I think, some of the things that I've really done in the last couple of years was making sure that we have a good foundation, right? We have all the good things in place, whether they be internal controls, a healthy staff culture, that we have good relationships with the board and with our committees. Like having those foundational elements and the support and trust means that I get a little bit of leverage to say, oh, I think we might ought to try this and see how it works. It might not be perfect. A good example of that, we did a technology day last year, a demo day. I don't think my board was all sold that there was a need there, but I kept hearing a little bit of a drumbeat. And the first year we did it, it wasn't perfect. It was hey, let's give this a try. And we had a couple of hundred people on the call, but everyone said, oh my gosh, this is great. This year we had over 700 people, and it's become a fixture of what we do. And so I think, you have to really invest in your core. And if you're doing those things right, then you have a little bit more freedom to, experiment on the edges and see what's going to work and build outwards.
Well, one of the interesting things that I know you've worked at, and I'm very interested in on a personal basis, is this idea of building a strategic thinking team. And I'm kind of interested in what you're learning as you go through this process, because it is not easy to get people to think strategically.
That is true. It is definitely a challenge. I think that's been probably one of my greatest challenges as CEO, and I think it will be, it is my next great challenge. Like I said, for the last couple of years, it's been really shoring up the foundations of our business. But it's very easy for a staff, particularly as you're going very quickly and there's a lot of day-to-day work of just keeping the association running, whether it be customer service or accounting and that sort of thing. But to making sure that they really are invested in that larger vision. And really, it had to start with our board. We had never had a long-term strategic plan. So we began with a very thorough and thoughtful strategic plan process last year. And we fortunately have a new great, very, very good strategic plan that we're working on implementing now. And our staff is making that transition from being very, very focused on what do I have to check off today into really how they are a critical element in making sure the strategic plan is front and center in their work, and that they are thinking strategically and coming to the table with ideas of how we implement it and implement it efficiently and effectively. I do my part in really limiting my conversations around day-to-day work. I have to mentor that. So we send very few internal emails. We do not make decisions by committee in our staff. They have a lot of leverage to make decisions. They come to me when they think there needs to be an executive, kind of approach to something, or they need a little bit permission. But for the most part, they are very lean and very focused and very self-motivated, which is important because we are a fully remote staff. So they need to be very autonomous. And I encourage that. But I have to do the work of making sure they are brought into the fold and are deeply connected to the direction of the organization. My own experience, when I think about it, 25 years ago in my first role at NTA, which you were mentioning, I remember getting a phone call from our board of directors out of the blue. And I was a fairly new employee. It was maybe a year and a half in. I was in a coordinator position, and I tripled our new member goal that first year. I think there was a lot of reasons for that, but that phone call was something I've carried with me a long time, because the ED made a concerted effort to stop a board meeting and have the board call me to thank me for my work in fulfilling that part of the strategic plan. And it has forever linked me to the idea that, my work is their work. Their work is my work. Their success is my success, and ultimately the success of the organization. So I really feel like my role as ED is carrying on what Hank Phillips did to me 25 years ago, and helping me feel deeply connected to the success of the organization. And that all starts with our strategic vision. So yeah, we do. And we have to work at it. This is a muscle we have to continue to stretch and make sure that our board doesn't get just in the weeds. They are having those thoughtful conversations. So
when you think about the future, what's going to be necessary for an organization like yours or for the association community in general to really move forward in this new environment that we all find ourselves in, what recommendations do you have for the association community when it comes to next steps that have to be taken so that we're relevant and meaningful as we proceed into this new environment?
yeah, I think there is well, let me ask what you mean by new environment. What do you think of this
Well, what
specific
I'm
challenges
thinking
you speak
about,
of?
I think that there are three, let me postulate that there are three big things going on in trends. One of them you've already mentioned, and that is modern technology. It just changes faster
Right.
than we can keep up with it. A
Sure.
second one, which you also mentioned, is this idea of continuous learning. There's really no end point anymore. You can get one degree after another degree or a certification, but there's always something moving forward. So we're in an always be learning world, which wasn't the way it was just a little bit ago. There was kind of like a terminal degree. And the third one is a more complicated in every organization, and that is the impact of globalization. You may be a regional operation or a national operation, but what's going on in the world has really changed the way we have to look at it. So these three big major trends are a part of what the 21st century is, which requires us to have much more foresight in what it is that we do. So that's what I mean when I say the new ecology of the 21st century.
Yeah, I think it requires a much greater level of nimbleness and a much deeper investment in consistent conversation. And also with the nimbleness, a deeper sense of what should I say? I think you spoke about it, like really understanding where you're coming from and what you want to keep, but also being very clear about where you want to go. And that, I think, is the challenge of all associations because, 20 years ago, we were saying, oh, the internet's coming. Associations aren't going to matter. Information is going to be plentiful. We're not going to be useful. And I think leaning into those things that really make associations special, that hasn't changed. That in-person experience of conference, I think we all wondered during COVID, would that go away? It's not. Education is one thing. The experience of learning together is a different thing. But also experimenting with where that education can take us with technology or with the next new thing. So it is that idea of really being rooted in what's true and good and drives association communities, but also being open enough to what's going to come next. And education is constantly expanding, and the need never ends. So what are we doing as an association to make sure that we are ready for those changes? And we have the staff in place to tackle it. We have committees who aren't living on doing the work that they were doing 10 years ago. They're really focused on what our strategic plan is saying or what's coming down the road. That piece of foresight is one of the toughest things that we do. And but it's an important piece. We want to be out ahead if we want to compete with all the other options out there, whether it be internet, whether it be other providers of education, because they're out there for us. But the goal is ultimately, for us, it's about increasing the level of support and competency in grants management. So how are we doing that with where we are today? And where do we think we're going to go tomorrow? And that's part of that strategic process.
One thing before we wrap up, Tip, and that is every organization, yours, all the associations, resources are relatively limited. And I'm wondering if in this journey that you've been on in helping them with major increases in membership, with the idea of being in front of what's going on, as you said, nimble or agile kind of thing. What has it meant in terms of resource allocation? Have you had to rethink how resources are utilized? And what advice might you provide to the rest of us to do a good job?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think, well, there's a few things when it comes to resources. I'm very proud that in my time I've brought on, or I've really helped my staff see that there are technologies that can help us do our work faster and easier. We brought on I would say probably 5 or 6 different new softwares just in the last year that have revolutionized how we do some of our work. So as a small staff, and certainly our small staff advisory council for ASAE talk a lot about how we have to lean on technology and outside consultants. That as small staff, we have more stress on us around those resources, whether they be financial or really staff capacity is the top one for me. So absolutely, I would say that that's a huge challenge. I certainly look to my professional community and to my ASAE Collaborate folks to give me new ideas, or for our consulting partners to say, hey, is there an easier way to do this? I feel like I'm constantly in that mode of how do we work smarter and not harder. That is, again, I think part of my role as CEO is to support my staff that way. But yeah, small staff, man, we're doing a lot with a little.
Well, Tip, I want to thank you for joining us today, and I want to congratulate you on all the success that NGMA is having under your leadership and with your team and your board. Association Futures is a forward-thinking podcast that delves into the future of associations. So our mission is to help associations navigate the ever-evolving landscape by anticipating trends, avoiding short-sighted decisions, and ensuring long-term success. So we hope you'll tune in to gain insights like you did today, foresight, and actionable strategies for your association's journey. Thanks, Tip. We'll see you all in a couple weeks. Have a great day.